And it's BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello, everybody. Today is Tuesday. Welcome to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. I am your host, Black Box Ned. And because today is Tuesday, we can say hello to Snoopy here. And how is everybody doing? We already have several people in the chat. We have Jerome from the French Wrecking Crew. Hello, Jerome. How's it going? And Casbah is here, says good morning. Good morning to you too, Casbah. Andrew WVA is here, my brother from West Virginia. Always great to see another West Virginian. And Mr. Flack Nasty says, love you, Ned. Love you too, Mr. Flack Nasty. So, how's everybody doing on this Tuesday? And welcome to the return of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. Last week, for the Tuesday and Thursday shows, I did an episode on the Freeway Phantom and the CIA PSYOP manual, respectively. However, we are back in the swing of normal things with True Crime Talk Radio coming to you every Tuesday and Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, today I'm going to start out by talking about some true crime shows that have impacted me over the years. And you guys can also put anything you want in the chat. You can talk about fictional shows, true crime shows. But I grew up watching this stuff. And one of them that stood out to me a lot was called World's Wildest Police Videos. It was hosted by Sheriff John Bonnell. And I would watch it every Friday night, just kind of sitting in this room in my house by myself. And I guess the other family was doing other things. That gives you some window into my childhood. And I just found it to be so exhilarating to watch stories of police chases and car chases and somebody driving 100 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood. And I didn't know at the time, but that stuff was viewed as filler by the networks. There used to be a time when Friday night was the best time to watch TV, TGIF. That's used to be on the air, but then all of a sudden it kind of just turned into one of the least popular nights. But yes, I definitely grew up watching World's Wildest Police Videos. Big shout out to John Bonnell. And then the next show that had a big impact on me growing up was Cops. Now, Cops is one that has had somewhat of a wavering reputation, and I think it's because of a lot of the political issues that the police have dealt with over the past few years. But I grew up again just sitting in that room by myself watching true crime shows, and I was so young that I couldn't understand the words to the theme song to Cops. Do you guys remember this? Being young and like you're listening to music and you can't quite hear with the words. Like I thought the theme song to Cops was Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do? Just the noises. That's all that stood out. Like I can replicate those because I listened to it every Saturday night for years and years and years. But Cops came under fire in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd when not only were they saying that, the networks are done with it, they're not even going to air the reruns on certain networks. And they had a reversal about that. And then they started to put it back on. But in 2020, I was at a point where I just wanted to ingest everything related to the true crime world. Black Box Online Radio came to you 7 days a week. I would do the show for 20 minutes, and any true crime subject was fair game. So I just wanted to pull in all of these sources. And there was one podcast that I followed called PD Stories. And purely because it was a true crime podcast, I listened to it. And one thing that was so valuable at PD Stories, PD meaning police department, it was because they talked about stories of human experience, like a Chinese American police officer who goes undercover in Chinatown, or there's also this one they did on a police officer who would help out in his family's business, a coffee shop, and their business went under in the recession, telling stories of human experience. So I'm big fans of all of those things, and sometimes it goes away though. And we have Scott Bobbitt is here. Scott, how you doing? And Andrew says, "Is there an echo?" Oh, Andrew got rid of it. I mean, yeah, if you guys hear anything in the chat and any sounds going on, please let me know. And also, I want to drop the announcement because Jerome is here that we did a 3-hour panel discussion show on Jerome's channel, The French Wrecking Crew, with Richard Grinnell of ZodiacCiphers.com and Druser, also known as Andrew Gray. And of course, Jerome was there. And that was done in addition to the episode that came out on the weekends about Sandy Panzarella and Don Chaney discussing the documentary. His name was Arthur Lee Allen. And there's a lot of Zodiac killer content going around. And Jerome and I will be doing a live stream about Jack the Ripper coming out this weekend on the French Wrecking Crew. You can always go over to his channel and subscribe. You can also hit the like button and subscribe here on Black Box Online Radio. Now, as I said, I talked about World's Wildest Police Videos. I talked to you about cops. The next one, of course, to talk about is America's Most Wanted. America's Most Wanted is one that would come on after Cops on Saturday nights. They used to air two episodes of Cops on the Fox network where I lived, and it would be at 8 and 8:30. At 9 p.m. on Saturdays, they would air America's Most Wanted, hosted by John Walsh, and would talk about all of these criminals who were on the run and they're trying to track them down, most wanted criminals. This was the first program to introduce the story of the Zodiac Killer to me. He terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area. And that's something that just stayed with me for, well, the rest of my life. But their introductory statements were very valuable. Later on in life, I would learn that John Walsh is somewhat of a foe to the Zodiac Killer community. However, I mean, I think America's Most Wanted was very good for sharing a lot of exposure about stories. They did a very, very big presentation on the manhunt for Eric Robert Rudolph, who was the Olympic bomber, and they talk about his crimes a lot in the movie Richard Jewell, if you ever get to see that one. But of course, Eric Rudolph is not even mentioned, not even featured in that movie. They just talk about him. But after America's Most Wanted, another show that I grew up with was Lockup, but this came much later on in life. Lockup was completely different in terms of true crime because it told the stories of prisoners who were in jail, who were incarcerated, life sentence. Maybe they even had some death row cases, and they're showing the lives and experiences of people who are behind bars. And this is something though that just it was so addictive. And it's because of that darn MSNBC who would just air these marathons of Lockup on Sundays. I'm pretty sure they did Caught on Camera on Saturdays and Lockup on Sundays, and I would just watch it all because that's what I do. I just try to absorb true crime content. And we have a question here from Omar who says, "Hey, Ned, what do you think about Richard Hoffman's grandson?" Well, I've talked a lot about his grandson, whose name is Jeremy Foy, and he is accusing Richard Hoffman of being the Zodiac Killer. But do you mean that Jay Foy has put out something new? I have not seen any of his newest videos, not for about at least 7 days. The last one I saw was somewhat of his emotional breakdown video, not criticizing him for that or anything, but that's what was in the video. And I think he's dealing with a lot of pressure. In the most recent video that I saw, Jeremy Foy, was talking about how he came forward. He was on TikTok saying that his grandfather was the Zodiac Killer, and it's just his videos went viral, right? He got tens of millions of views, and he also got a lot of pushback. He got a lot of criticism, and he's just like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know how to process this. I don't know how to deal with all of this." And it's a hard thing to do because he was talking about how he is trying to uphold his sobriety. I'm not sure what thing he was battling in the past, but he has some of his own issues, and I just wish him nothing but the best strength and honor heading his way. Fire Pixie is here. Good morning. Okay, though, so that's Lockup. Then one of the shows that needs to be absolutely regarded as one of the top true crime programs of all time is 48 Hours. Full credit goes to Erin Moriarty for her coverage, her storytelling, and we can even see stuff from her in the 90s when she was covering true crime cases. 48 Hours is a program that told stories usually about a murder took place and someone is on trial. Did they do it or not? And their presentations are very good, very engaging. And, they really also get into the humanity of everything. But I might have to say that the number one true crime program of all time would be Forensic Files. And I don't think that that's even a controversial statement. Maybe there are going to be some things out there, unsolved mysteries. How about that one? Some people like Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, but that's a blend of true crime and falsehoods. Forensic Files, though, told the stories from the point of view of the investigators, and they made the investigators look like the hero. Absolutely no glorification of the killers in any way. And sometimes they even just did stories of accidents, and they're not even talking about murders, but they're showing like, okay, this is what happens when you commit murder. You leave one fiber from your clothing behind. The detectives are going to get it. And we have a comment here from Andrew WVA who says, "Ned, have you watched the Behavior Panel on YouTube? The show is 4 experts watching videos of suspect interviews and commenting on suspicious body language and words." No, I haven't, but I would love to. That sounds like it's right up my alley. I think someone has recommended that in the past, but I can always add it to the list and maybe it'll be worked in to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. And this show is also available for free downloads on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can get it for free under the names Black Box Podcast or Black Box True Crime. Melissa says, "Good morning and good evening, Ned." Melissa has her coffee cup, so Melissa, you can say hello to Snoopy. You got a cheers. And Jerome is here. Oh yeah, Jerome's just saying hi to everybody in the chat. Of course, we already said hi to Jerome. Dark Side of the Moon is here. He says, "Hi, Ned. Hi, everyone." That's some things that I want to talk about at first. Moving on to the next segment, we not only have crime shows on television, but we also have a lot of true crime YouTubers out there. Lately, I've been watching a lot of the Nick Crowley videos. I found his videos in 2023, and they're very well done. They're very popular. Lots of them have 1 million views, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million views. He puts out maybe one video a month, and it does very well. It performs very well. And he talks about things that are very gripping, just about going down the YouTube rabbit hole. Do you remember that expression, getting lost in the weird part of YouTube? Because Nick Crowley does some very good presentations on this. However, the problem is I don't remember anything from them. He gets your attention. Attractive thumbnails, attractive titles, 4 of the darkest YouTube channels ever. I can't resist that stuff. And when I'm watching it, I understand everything. And there's a very nice blend between the person in front of the camera, the way that I am now for the YouTube audience, and going back to the archive footage and the stock footage. But I can't remember anything that I hear on that channel because it's not done for education, and it's not even done for anything other than just infotainment. Most of the stories, are documented, so they are real stories, and I talk about real experiences of YouTubers. However, they aren't necessarily going down in a way where people are going to be digesting this stuff and taking anything away from it. But we have something from Melissa Tappa here who says, "Jeff has been checking out the true crime TikTok live stream world. Not much out there." Melissa, I make shorts that I release on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Those come out Monday through Friday, and my name is BlackboxNed88 on Instagram and TikTok. Please follow me over there if you want. And I put them out, and I'm getting some interactions. It seems like somebody is watching them, unless it's the Chinese bots. But I just don't see any other TikTok channel that's like mine, just talking about true crime. This person was a serial killer, and now they're dead. They don't really narrate things the way that I do. So I'm really quite curious as to how TikTok shares things. And a lot of other people have turned to TikTok. Dr. David Gold, who's the author of My Dance with the Zodiac Killer, has been using TikTok for a very long time. But at the same time, I'm really not sure where the TikTok true crime audience is over there, with the exception of J-Foy, of course. His videos went very viral because, he knew how to present his content to the TikTok audience. And Chad is here. Hey, Chad K. Make a J-Foy Ideas Review TikTok video. Well, I mean, if you want me to do that in his tradition or something, just be like a giant blend of shouting and images and so on. But Fire Pixie says, "Until I show up, then everyone leaves." Fire Pixie, we love you. But, there was a YouTube channel that I just discovered called Rotten Mango. And this one was completely different than that stuff that I was saying about Nick Crowley, because Rotten Mango really seemed like one of those channels where the host is trying to convey something to the audience. Like, if I'm talking about true crime cases, I don't want anybody to just kind of follow along in a hypnotic way and just not remember anything. If I'm talking about true crime cases, out of respect and fairness to the victims and the families and everybody associated with it, I want people to remember the stuff and, at least understand the story. It's not just about clickbait, and it's not just about the titles and the thumbnails. I would want people to actually appreciate what's going on. This channel, Rotten Mango, told the story of an individual named Jong Yu Jong from South Korea. And it was one of the more shocking stories that I heard at first. She was a 23-year-old woman who lured another person to her home, saying that she wanted English lessons, that she wanted an English tutor. And a woman showed up, a young woman, and this 23-year-old woman, Jong Yu Jong, murdered her, dismembered her body, put her into a suitcase, and then took her to a dump site. And she was seen walking down the street, bouncing and laughing. She's seen on security footage, CCTV cameras, just bouncing and laughing as she's pulling this suitcase with the dismembered body in it. She got into a taxi and then requested to be driven to a dump site. And then the taxi driver knew that something was wrong because he helped her lift the bag. And there's one variant of the story that says he picked it up, and because the material was so light, he got blood on his hand. And then he's like, oh, I got to call the police. But that's just a variant of the story that doesn't appear to be verified. What people actually think may have happened is that he picked up the suitcase and he could feel that it was something like body parts, and he alerted the authorities, and she was easily captured. But the odd things about Jong Yu Jong's story is that there were so many mental health issues and so many mental health warning signs about her behavior, yet the family didn't necessarily do anything about it. Her former classmates reported that she did not talk to anyone if she didn't have to. She would hide behind a curtain at school and just start eating when it was time to do so. She just would not experience any type of communication that she did not want to. And I didn't hear this mentioned at all in the Rotten Mango episode. However, I believe that that is something associated with selective mutism, where people only talk to certain individuals. Another aspect of Jung Yu Jung's behavior that was very bizarre is that even though she didn't like to talk to people, she would go to a store and buy something, and she would always count her change and make sure that it was exact. And if somebody were even off by a penny, she would just throw a tantrum and demand that she be given back that penny. And this ties into another thing. Even though she has selective mutism, she doesn't like to talk to people. She applied 3 times to be a caddy at a golf course, to be a golf caddy. But when she was actually given the interview, she didn't say anything during the interview. She just stared blankly. And then she was notified that she did not get the job. So then she actually called them and very angrily expressed her discontent that she did not get this job, even though she didn't speak during the job interview. So all of these things to me are talking about some things that I didn't hear mentioned at all in the Rotten Mango video. Number one was selective mutism. Number two was it sounds like it's quite possible that she was on the spectrum, but they didn't talk about anything like autism, autism spectrum disorder, anything of that sort. But the thing about precision and just having a very, very specific reason for doing things like wanting to be a golf caddy, even though you don't like to talk. I mean, I've definitely experienced some things like that from people who have either autism or they are on the spectrum. But as I was watching this video done by Rotten Mango, and it was a attractive presentation that was done on that channel, they also shared some stuff about psychopathy. And one of my first instincts was, okay, there's this girl, 23 years old. She murders a woman, dismembers her body, puts her into a suitcase. She has no social skills of any kind. She doesn't really like to talk to anyone unless she absolutely has to. My immediate response was, this person has antisocial personality disorder. Then I was like, wait a second, maybe she doesn't. And what I think is so interesting is when you go through countless true crime cases, as we've done here on Black Box Online Radio together, as we've done here on True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, you can recognize certain patterns of behavior. And when Jong Yu Jong was given the hair checklist, the psychopath test, we can call it that, but it's the hair checklist, the 20-item checklist, and you get a score of 0, 1, or 2 for each item. In the United States, if you score 30 or higher, you're deemed to be a clinical psychopath. But the YouTuber who was doing this presentation, Rotten Mango, appears to be from Canada. And in Canada, every country has their own rankings for the hair checklist. It's 25 out of 30, 25 out of 40, excuse me, to be a clinical psychopath. And I told you that my immediate response was, yeah, this person's a psychopath. And my secondary response was, wait a second, maybe they're not. She scored like a 28 out of 30. So I'm like, wow, if you follow enough true crime cases, you can really get to that level where it appears that somebody is extremely borderline in terms of these psychopathic traits. But Jung Yu Jung tried to use several different defense methods to talk about how and why she committed this murder and why she dismembered the victim. And the victim is simply referred to as Hannah, but that's not her real name. That is an alias. Her identity has not been revealed to the public. So one thing was she said that the body parts actually belonged to a baby that she gave birth to and she was trying to hide, even though it was an adult female. That's not going to work. And the second one that's more widely discussed is she claimed that she was a big fan of true crime programs, that she would watch serial killer documentaries, and she was brainwashed by them and just wanted to commit the murder to see what it was like because she had watched it so much on true crime television and YouTube. And just streaming services. Maybe she listened to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning with me, Black Box Ned. This is a useless defense. Nobody believed it. Nobody believed it because just because you watch something online, that doesn't give you an excuse to do it. Notice how people rarely do these things when it can cause physical pain to themselves. Like the kids who see something on TV about a wrestling move and they try it out on somebody. Hey, I want to act out this wrestling move on you. They don't say, I want you to try and put me in an arm lock and see if it hurts me. No, they want to try and do something that could inflict pain on somebody else, just like Jong Yu Jong did. And ultimately, that was her downfall. And she was deemed to have been sane and competent to stand trial. She even apologized for her crimes, although it appears to be an insincere apology, and she might have just been doing it to try and get a lighter sentence or reduced punishment or something to the point where she is just going to get a little bit out of trouble. But ultimately, I do think that, yes, she is a psychopath, antisocial personality disorder, partnered with some on the spectrum issues and selective mutism. And we have some things here in the chat. Fire Pixie says, I enjoy watching Rotten Mango videos. Well, like, as I said, big difference between her channel and Nick Crowley's channel, and they're both very large. They both get views in the millions, but a big difference is with Rotten Mango, it really appeared that she was trying to tell the story in a way that people would connect with. Whereas with Nick Crowley, he'll just sort of tell maybe sometimes 4 or 5 stories in one video, and, it's very short. There's a whole bunch of information, and it's hard to remember. Rotten Mango is way more engaging. Manny Grossman is here on the Grossman Files account. Hey, Manny, how's it going? You get a cheers from Snoopy. Welcome to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. And we have just watched a little with your recent panel on the French Wrecking Crew, where the Son of Sam sketches came up. Contrary to popular belief, all the sketches were pretty good. Savino's was the best. Well, Manny, you think so? I mean, when I look at the Son of Sam sketches, I really do see different people. And now, Manny, this is right. Some people even tried to say that in the Son of Sam sketches, some of those are women. They say there's no way it could have been Berkowitz at all at the crime scenes because those Son of Sam sketches resemble female features. And is that true? Andrew WVA says, Kyoto Roboto is another interesting channel that covers cases in Japan. Oh, yes, absolutely. I would love to watch some of that because the true crime stories from Japan and South Korea really do appear to be quite different than a lot of ones that are from America. But they're also shared in ways where I can see the similarities. People feel ostracized. They feel excluded. They feel isolated from society, lack of bonding with the parents, and they resort to violent tendencies. And we have some things in the chat here. Manny Grossman says, if you say so, I see Berkowitz in every one of them. Manny, what I find with composite sketches is some witnesses can usually remember certain elements of them. Like you can remember the jawline in one, maybe the hairline in one, maybe the eyes in one. But a lot of you guys follow the Zodiac Killer mystery. And how many solid Zodiac Killer composite sketches do we have? 1.5. There are 2 Presidio Heights sketches from the Zodiac Killer that were done after the murder of Paul Stein on October 11th of 1969. But there's the sketch and the revised sketch. The one with the glasses and the crew cut. That's really all we have to go on. If Mike Bijot had been able to provide a composite after the Blue Rock Springs shooting on July 4th of that year, maybe we'd have something completely different. And Jeff Jones says, Jerome is correct. The Son of Sam sketches are very different. Jerome also says, that's why Maury Terry was sure about his multiple killers theory. Oh, well, Jerome, I mean, you're going to be kicking the hornet's nest if you're going to be provoking Manny with that, because haven't you heard the news? Maury Terry's been debunked 1,000%. The guy using comic book characters as cult members. Well, that's the stuff that Manny's really trying to get into. And Manny, I'm not trying to speak on your behalf or anything. We're going to have to get you back on the show because I'm going to be restarting the interview series for Black Box Online Radio here. But it's that Maury Terry was more or less a liar. Manny, would you agree or disagree with something like that? That Maury Terry was more or less just up to no good, doing some types of fraudulent behavior, this multiple killers angle, and that's going to, it's a bunch of hoopla, and it's going in a bunch of wild directions, and Maury Terry might not have even believed it himself. Manny also says the only Son of Sam sketch that people refer to that isn't Berkey is the Lamino Damazzi one, but I have tons of pics of Berkey with that exact part hairstyle. Oh, and Jerome says, I did agree with you, Ned. Oh, you mean when I said that the Son of Sam sketches look different, or you agree that Maury Terry was a fraud? Manny also says, Maury Terry bribed Berkey for his story. Even Berkey just admitted it. Oh, yes, when I had Manny as a guest on the channel, he also talked about how Maury Terry was bribing David Berkowitz with Prison Commissary for going along with his story. If you watch the interview that Maury Terry did with David Berkowitz, Berkowitz states that he was only the shooter at 2 events in Son of Sam activity. At the other ones, he was the lookout, and he convinced people. By he, I mean Maury Terry convinced people such as Nisa Moskowitz, the mother of Stacy Moskowitz, and also Carl De Niro went on to even write a book about this, talking about why I wasn't shot by David Berkowitz. Manny says, anyone can read the letters between Berkey and Maury. Maury paid him off. And you know, Manny, and everybody in the chat, when people are pushing some type of far-out, wacky, wild conspiracy, you always have to question it. And it's not just because it's a conspiracy theory. Oh, no. Sometimes conspiracy theories are true. Read about Operation Northwoods. I mean, read about the CIA's actions and involvement in Cuba, period. Just look at what the CIA does, hands down. How about Mohammed Mossadegh in Iran? Sometimes conspiracy theories are true. The problem is, though, sometimes people try to take a conspiracy theory and they connect it to multiple worldly events. Like, say, for example, somebody like Maury Terry writing The Ultimate Evil saying, you got the Son of Sam in New York, the Manson family in California, let's connect them, and also tie in the murder of Arliss Perry in 1974. Connecting worldly events together through the usage of true crime rationale is a recipe for disaster, my friends. And we have a super chat here from Jeff Jones. Jeff Jones, thank you so much. Much appreciated. And, always glad to find anybody who wants to support the channel. You can also use buymeacoffee.com/blackboxnid88. And anybody who makes a donation or contribution will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday. And we are going to be continuing with the chat here. And Manny says, Carl isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, talking about Carl De Niro. But Manny, he has one thick skull. Lucky guy, lucky guy. Jeff Thornton is here. And I guess we have Melissa and Jeff. They are the webmasters of Zodiac Killer and Me on Facebook and ZodiacKillerBomb.com. Now, Jeff and Melissa met with the FBI in San Francisco to talk about their Zodiac Killer findings in regards to their suspect, Loring Dale Hill. I have at least 3 episodes on this channel where I discuss Loring Dale Hill. 2 of them are interviews that I've done with Melissa. Jeff was present for the second one. I invite you guys to check it out. And I hope you guys are going to be visiting more episodes of Black Box Online Radio and the new interviews that are going to be coming out here. Manny Grossman says, I'm an old school conspiracy head, Ned, but Son of Sam was not a conspiracy. You know, Manny, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Absolutely. You think YouTube is perfect? YouTube is very, very conspiratorial. The way that they censor certain subjects and certain accounts because they don't want certain elements of the truth getting out. Yes. Mark Zuckerberg may have done that once or 9 times. Right? I don't even think you dispute that. Even if you're not a conspiracy theorist, you know that stuff's going on. I'm a conspiracy theorist in a different way because these are some of the things that I wanted to talk about on the French Wrecking Group panel with Jerome. And that is that they're talking about conspiracy theories in the true crime world. Now, Manny Grossman says conspiracy theories and true crime do not mix. Well, Manny, maybe the boring ones do. Maybe the ones that aren't exciting, like, let's say, members of law enforcement botched the investigation. So now, 2 or more people are going to tell lies to cover it up. That does meet the definition of a conspiracy theory in my book. 2 or more people hiding the truth, usually for a malicious reason. But that's not exciting. That's just police officers being lazy, caring about reputations instead of the facts, not trying to catch the killer or killers plural, not trying to find the missing person because they blew it. They botched the investigations. And Manny says, if you have time, watch the Billy the Artist interview. Maury called him the most crucial eyewitness. Billy trolled him for drug money and gave him comic art. Well, it's like somebody like Maury Terry seems so locked into the ultimate evil, Manny, that he's going to go along with that no matter what. He's going to just, there's no turning back and just saying, oh, yeah, I was wrong. Like, how would Maury Terry be able to pull himself out of that? Now, Jeff has an update actually on his visit with the FBI. Jeff says the FBI were impressed with our work and encouraged us to continue and give them more validated research. One more time, their website is zodiackillerbomb.com and their suspect's name is Loring Dale Hill. Melissa says they said they were hiring. They, meaning the FBI agent, said that they were hiring. Hey, Jeff and Melissa, if you guys have some career changes in your book, go for it. And Manny says, I think you'll have a much different perspective on Maury Terry after you watch the Billy the Artist interview. Well, this isn't for you, Manny. This is for everybody else in the chat. When I first learned about Maury Terry, I found that he was using that concept, like the deceptive tactic that I talked about on Zodiac Monday once, called fragmenting. When somebody has a very large conspiracy theory, sometimes they don't give everything away all at once. Maury Terry would be a clear-cut example of this, where you first need to understand what they're saying. And I'm just kind of sitting back and, I'm watching YouTube videos and even James Franco TV talking about this. Wait, what? What does he think about this? What does he think about that? What does Maury Terry think about the Son of Sam? What does Maury Terry think about Manson? What's the Arliss Perry connection? And I just wanted to know more. And that's how people get pulled in, because at first, you want to understand what the person is saying. They give you these little fragments all at once. And by the time you've got 75% of the puzzle solved, you're already kind of in that world. And we have some other things here. Jerome says, Maury Terry was really passionate, even if he was wrong. And, okay, these guys are going in the chat a little bit, going back and forth. But in terms of True Crime Talk Radio, I also want to talk to you guys about a different story. And this is one that I heard on a YouTube channel that was from the United Kingdom. And it was the story of Kirat Asi. Kirat Asi was a catfish victim. And recently on True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, I was talking to you about the story of Gemma Barker. And that was maybe the most outrageous catfish story that I've ever heard. Catfishing is when people create these fake identities online. And Gemma Barker created 3 fake identities where she, a woman, was pretending to be men, but she actually met up with the women that she was talking to with disguises and pretended to be their boyfriends. And she even used a toy on them to have sex, like under the blanket, just saying, don't look at me, I'm nervous, and things to that effect. With the story of Kirat Asi, she developed an online relationship with a man. But what was so shocking about this catfish story is that it went on for 10 years. I thought I remembered very clearly her saying in the video that she was in the relationship for 8 years, but in a different YouTube video, it said 10 years. And the whole time, she never once heard the man speak. She's talking to him on Skype, but she does the talking, and he has no picture, and he is just typing, saying that he has a vocal cord disorder or that his vocal cords were damaged in surgery. And then, he's just unable to speak. 8 years, 10 years of an online relationship. I don't know, but, apparently that's what happened. Then she decides to hire a private investigator to find out why doesn't her online boyfriend want to meet her. So he does some backtracking, and he finds the place where the man lives. And this woman, Kirat Asi, goes to meet the man, and she finds out that his wife answers the door, and he has kids. And that's the end of the story, right? That's the end of the story, right? Oh, yeah, he was leading a double life. No, that guy was not the online boyfriend at all. Someone was just using his identity. And it turned out that the person that was catfishing her was her younger cousin. Her cousin whom she grew up with, who she even had the nickname Baby Sister. Her own cousin was pretending to be her online boyfriend for 10 years. It is a sick, sad, twisted, messed up world. And, these catfish stories get more and more outrageous. And I just think that it's going to show us that it's only going to get worse because of AI, deep fakes, altering people's voices with modulators, all of that stuff is going to get more and more intense, and it's just going to be very, very problematic. So we have quite a big discussion though going on here in the chat about Maury Terry and the ultimate evil. And Manny is saying that I was the world's biggest Maury Terry fan, and that's why I started the video series, but I realized that he lied to us. And Fire Pixie says, I heard about that one. That's crazy. Do you mean the story of Kiradasi? And Jerome says, can't make a comparison with Hitler and Maury Terry. It doesn't make sense. Now, let's be clear. Let's be clear. Adolf Hitler was way more evil than Maury Terry. The ultimate evil, perhaps, was Adolf Hitler. Hitler is heavily regarded as perhaps the most evil person of the 20th century, along with maybe Chairman Mao, Joseph Stalin. Those are the names that come up first. Yes, he was way more extreme than Maury Terry. But, I think what Manny was talking about is, well, let's just read his words here. He's talking about how I wasn't making a comparison. I was just saying that an analogy could be said for Hitler as well, meaning that Hitler may have believed in what he was doing. I don't really know. We're never going to know what Hitler was truly thinking. He took his secrets to the grave. Or maybe Argentina, or as Thomas Horan would say, paper clipped to the United States, some way, somehow. By the way, the Operation Paperclip stuff is not 100% baseless, but a big proponent of those theories was Mae Brussel, who was working into the 1980s, the Queen of Conspiracy, and she hosted the show Dialogue Conspiracy. She talked about how Operation Paperclip should be regarded as a crucial element to many other stories in the United States. And, I respect Mae Brussel. I've heard her show online. I think she was a very good presenter, and I appreciate her challenging things, but that's genuine skepticism, and it doesn't sound like that's what Maury Terry was doing. However, I also wanted to bring up Adolf Hitler for a different reason, because when I was on the French Wrecking Crew with Jerome, we were talking about like stories versus reality. And somebody asked a question in the chat. How do these wild stories affect the truth? And my response was maybe something that I should not have said. And that was that I don't really think they affect the truth, because when you look at the historical events versus just stories that people are telling, at a certain point we can differentiate between them. With the Zodiac case, members of law enforcement are going to be using the hard evidence and not just some story from the sea waters even. And what I said was, with the story of Jack the Ripper, there are many novels that have been written about Jack the Ripper and short stories about Jack the Ripper that are fictional. They claim to be fictional. They don't claim to be telling the secret identity of the Ripper and sharing that to the public. They're like, this is a story where Jack the Ripper is a character. The stuff that I want to follow up on is that an ethical thing to do? Is that a good thing to do? To have these types of stories where Jack the Ripper is used as a character. Jack the Ripper was a terrible serial killer. He mutilated at least 5 women, or he murdered at least 5 women, mutilated 4 of them. He slit Liz Stride's throat, but she wasn't mutilated. But Jack the Ripper was just some type of low-life thug serial killer. And my honest response would be, Adolf Hitler would be somebody who is way worse than Jack the Ripper. Hitler is somebody who participated in way more atrocities than Jack the Ripper. But Hitler is used in countless pieces of fiction. And I don't think people have a problem with that, because the majority of them, the overwhelming majority of them, are not glorifying Hitler. He's being portrayed as a villain. So when somebody like Hitler is going to be used in fictional movies like Inglourious Bastards, perhaps, alters countless things in the historical timeline, but you know that it's just a story, that's not really a problem. So I don't really see any problem with writing novels and stories about Jack the Ripper. And if the Zodiac Killer mystery does not get solved in the next 50 years, there are going to be more and more Zodiac Killer novels dealing with fictional stories about the Zodiac. With the Son of Sam, it's more difficult because we know who the Son of Sam shooter was. David Berkowitz. And I do agree with Manny that he acted alone. And it's always a bit hard for me to digest this whole narrative on how, there's this multiple killers operation, because I've looked into multiple killers with the Zodiac, multiple killers with Jack the Ripper, and it's just not necessary for these points to come together. Like a single perpetrator can explain all the evidence. Oh, and Jerome says Maury Terry was not evil, he was a liar. Well, I don't know about that. Like, I mean, it's really hard to say, Jerome, because when you're telling some pretty big lies on national television, when you're lying to the victims' families, like Nisa Moskowitz, trying to make her think that somebody else did something that wasn't true. I don't know. That's definitely not a good thing. He's definitely not high in my book. And more, Manny says, I disagree. Terry's lies re-victimize the victims and the families. That's pure evil to me, especially that he knew he was lying. I'm kind of siding with that because when somebody is blatantly telling lies and getting the victims' families to go along with his act, that's not a good thing. Now, some people were hard on me for the most recent Zodiac Monday episode because I was talking about Robert Graysmith, and I said he is the McDonald's cheeseburger of the true crime world. And they're like, hey, whoa, that's too much, that's unfair. That stuff is not good. I mean, I would hardly put Graysmith on the same level as Hitler or even on the same level as Maury Terry. Graysmith, though, would be somebody who is a liar, self-serving, saying things that weren't true in his books. But it really depends on... You see, what the difference with Maury Terry is he incorporated the victims' families and spread all of this info about the multiple killers thing and the cult and just things that absolutely betrayed the family members. Manny says, sorry for spamming your chat, Ned. I'll back off. Take care. Thanks for the French Wrecking Crew and his replies. Hey, Manny, this is True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. You guys can put stuff in the chat, and I will talk about it. But Jerome says, you are right. There is a big difference between 52 millions of victims and the lies of Maury Terry. And Jeff Jones says, I will see you when Manny is gone. Well, Manny has left the chat, Jeff, but yes, you can always come back in. And, I don't really have a problem with Manny. I appreciate what he does, and I appreciate how he follows the facts. And, he's going through the documents. He goes through the files for the Son of Sam case. And it's really just going to show us that there are some things that people will not let go, because once the theory like Maury Terry's ultimate evil is out there, people aren't going to back down from it. That's just another sad aspect of life. That's another sad aspect of the true crime world, because there are individuals out there, and I'm not naming any names because I don't mean anyone specific, but they don't want to back down from a conspiracy theory. And there are a couple different reasons for this. One, the conspiracy theory is very exhilarating, and real life is boring. What do you mean it was just the fat, hairy, schizophrenic guy? What do you mean? That's it? Yeah. And, Melissa says, good morning. And Manny says, I was commenting on your analogy, not saying that Terry was like Hitler. Yeah, we got it. I mean, it's all good, and you guys can express any type of opinion you want. Melissa says, I'm glad it's Manny on here and not Rex. Oh, do you mean Rex Grossman? Rex Grossman, the quarterback? Ah, yes, it is the NFL season now, and things are off to an absolutely horrible start, but it is still entertaining all the same. Last year, I thought the games were pretty good because they were going in all types of different directions, a lot of surprises and twists and turns. Then the Super Bowl happened, and back to square one of ordinary Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and the MVP Taylor Swift. But in terms of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, I want to open up the floor now. You can put anything you want in the chat, and we will try our best to discuss it. Now, I do want to come back to some particular points. I said that some of these videos that I've been watching were not very captivating, and there are a lot of channels out there that arrange their episodes where they combine many different stories together. And, I mean, I'm going to do something very unprofessional right now, because one of the stories that I wanted to talk to you guys about for True Crime Talk Radio in the morning is something that I'm afraid that I'm going to mispronounce. So I'm going to be looking it up right now. And the worst part is I didn't even forget. I just wanted to make sure that I was saying it right. And it's the story of the Jokela school shooting in Finland, the Jokela massacre. And this had a school shooter who was using the online name Natural Selection 89. And he put out all of these videos on YouTube talking about how he believed that just life was a miserable experience, that civilization was bad, and that he wanted to free people from it. So he planned a mass shooting in Finland. And there was a YouTuber out there named The Amazing Atheist who made a lot of responses to this guy when he was alive. And, I haven't watched The Amazing Atheist. I only know about the bad things associated with his reputation and his weird sex acts. But in terms of this mass shooting, I just thought it was really interesting to encounter the stuff of the Yokola school massacre when I had just been talking to you guys about Adam Lanza, the Newtown shooter from Sandy Hook, and always talking to you guys about the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, who are also pushing the same narrative. Society is bad. Civilization is bad. Therefore, I need to commit a mass shooting. Well, for what? For what? Just to get your point across? No, no. This is another textbook example of somebody who is using a type of ideological movement to justify their self-serving violent tendencies, their self-serving homicidal tendencies, their self-serving destructive behavior. And with the Ocala shooter, I think that it's a little bit unclear when he decided this, because I think with both Ted Kaczynski and the Newtown shooter, Adam Lanza, that he was they were both deciding from an early age that they wanted to be killers, and they were just finding a way to convince themselves to go through with it. But that's their own homicidal ideation. That is not anything to do with an agenda. With the Ocala shooter, it's probably the same story, where somebody is just very frustrated with his situation in life. But this is what I don't get. If you don't like civilization, you can do what Ted Kaczynski did, minus the murders. You can go live in a cabin in Montana by yourself and not talk to anyone. You can be a hermit. You can be a hobo, a vagabond, just someone who's catching trains and boxcars and so on. I'm from West Virginia. We still have the open boxcars going by to this day. You can jump on in them. I've never done it because I don't want to lose a leg, but you don't have to be part of the society. You can just kind of roam about, especially someone like Kaczynski, someone like Adam Lanza in the United States of America. Grab your backpack and go walk out into the desert if you want. If you don't want to be part of civilization, what is the reason to commit these types of homicides? Self-serving violent tendencies, self-serving desires to inflict harm on other people, to leave this world and create as much destruction as you can on the way out. And those comments would be specifically directed to the Finnish school shooter from Jokela and from Adam Lanza. With Ted Kaczynski, it appeared that he did not want to get captured and that he wanted to mail in these bombs for his own destructive reasons, but he was somebody who was already disconnected from society, more or less. He's living in Lincoln, Montana in his little cabin and so on. And we have one from Casbah. I love how you said conspiracy theories can be true. Of course they can. People do hide the truth. Nobody is perfect. And one thing that I was planning on doing for Black Box Online Radio that I was a little bit hesitant about was talking about cartoon conspiracy theories purely for entertainment. When you look at not only cartoons, but maybe even some other TV shows about how people come up with these types of fan theories when they think that there are hidden meanings that have been shared in a TV show that we're supposed to find. And in the past, I was like, well, are those really conspiracy theories? And the answer is yes. Two or more people hiding the truth, usually for a malicious reason, but not always. Eric L. is here. He says, hi, Ned and all. Got it live from here in NorCal. Tons of weirdos. And I think it's funny over the years how people, pronounce cities and places wrong, like Benicia, for example. Oh, NorCal, Eric from NorCal, am I saying it right? Is Benicia, right? Not Benicia. I was saying Benicia for years because I went to Spanish 1 in the 8th grade. So Benicia, that's how I want to say it. But and Jerome says it's horrible to Eric L. But Benicia is correct. Well, all right, I'm going to try that because it's Benicia, right? And the Zodiac Killer also committed his crimes in Vallejo, right? You don't pronounce the J. I saw this in the comments section on Black Box Online Radio. People were talking about the Zodiac Killer's good times in Vallejo. Not Vallejo, but Vallejo. Let me know if I'm right, Eric L. You're from NorCal. And okay, Jerome says that he thought the cartoon conspiracies would be a good idea for a bonus episode of Black Box Online Radio. You know, I was talking to you guys once about my segment for Evil California, and I was asking you what should I call it. And Batman66, a longtime follower of this program, said that Evil California. You know, I mean, I was asking for alternative names. He said Creepy California. That's a little bit better. But in terms of what that segment is, it would be to focus in on a lot of these stories from California and just share them in a very concentrated way. And when I started learning about DB Cooper, I was like, oh no, we can't just do Evil California, Creepy California. This has to be something West Coast, Pacific region, Cascade Mountains, or something like that, Sierra Nevadas, or something to that effect. But of course, DB Cooper is Washington State and Oregon. And yes, every Friday I do a segment about DB Cooper here on Black Box Online Radio called Cooper Friday. I invite you guys to check that out. You can also hit the like button and subscribe if you want to follow along with all of these discussions. But yeah, I'm thinking about expanding that one. I'm still not completely sure how I'm going to present that one, but I think that it will happen soon. Fire Pixie says that if you are really researching a topic, you have to stay open-minded and be willing to change when new evidence appears. You know, Fire Pixie, people do this in the academic world all the time. They are arguing a point. Their research, their lifelong work has indicated that this is what's happening, especially with historians, archaeologists, and then sometimes they reverse their positions. You know, like I was reading about this one World War II historian who thought that this is the way that Nazi Germany functioned. Then he found some papers from Adolf Eichmann, and he's like, whoa, wow, this really changes the way that I think about everything. I also saw this one documentary once called The Lost Pyramids of Corral, and this one guy was just talking about how he believed that civilization in South America was created because of warfare. Your tribe, my tribe, comes together, and now we have a stronger tribe, right? All the archaeological evidence indicated that he was wrong. He's like, I admit that I was wrong. It appears that trade was the foundation of civilization in South America. You can bring your items, I bring my items. We can trade, commerce, exchange of goods, productivity. It's not the weapons, it's the exchange that appears to be valuable. So, I mean, that guy backed down, and he backed down from something that he supported for 20 years. But anyway, this episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning is winding down. Thank you so much to everybody who was listening to this. And if you are listening to this in the future date, you can tune in every Tuesday and Thursday at 10:30 a.m. for True Crime Talk Radio in the morning in the summer for me and Snoopy here. I'm your host, Blackbox Ned. I'm available on Facebook under the name Ned DeHaan, on TikTok and Instagram, BlackboxNed88. And of course, there is a Blackbox Online Radio page as well on Facebook, and you can always just get stuff here on YouTube. I put shorts out Monday through Friday, every Monday about the Zodiac Killer, every Wednesday about Jack the Ripper, and every Friday about DB Cooper. And everybody in the chat, you guys have a wonderful Tuesday, wonderful time, and I will see you on Wednesday talking about Jack the Ripper. And Jerome says, great show as usual. You're welcome, Jerome. Until next time, everybody.